All right, so a lot happened at least around the trade deadline, and then right after the deadline, Zach, something else happened, and it just is not lucky or good times in Vegas. Josh McDaniels out, and I think it all happened while we were sleeping in the middle of the night on Tuesday night.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, I would say for Raiders fans, probably a very good morning to wake up to. I know they were not happy with how things were going, but yeah, middle of the night, just Josh McDaniel out again after just barely halfway through his second year. So the poor guy can't stick with the team for more than 2 years.
Yeah, and he's making history for that too, by the way. So it's Josh McDaniels' second or third stint, depending on how you want to look at it. If you count that Colts moment of being a head
That was
coach,
legendary.
legendary. I think it lasted less than 9 hours. But for his 2 seasons of being the head coach, for more than a season, it was with the Denver Broncos and with the Vegas Raiders. But he has now become the first head coach in NFL history to be fired before the end of the second season for two different teams. And that was courtesy of James Palmer throwing that out there on Twitter. That's nuts. So that means
Yeah.
McDaniels was fired by the Broncos in 2010, and now he's fired by the Raiders 13 years later, after a really disappointing start to the season. But it wasn't just him, too, Zach. I mean,
Yeah.
they cleaned
Cleaned
house on
house.
some guys.
GM also gone, and the offensive coordinator. They said you can pack your bags as well. They're not scoring, and they blamed everybody. They blamed everybody. And then also Jimmy Garoppolo benched. Just everything new in Las Vegas. I guess what happens in Vegas did not stay in Vegas.
That is for sure. Aiden O'Connell now is going to be the starting quarterback. And people were probably wondering why Brian Hoyer started instead of Aiden against
Mhm.
that game against the Bears. And keep in mind, O'Connell almost led a comeback against the Chargers. Granted, he did take a lot of
Yeah.
sacks, but a lot of problems. But the reality was the Raiders were not winning games, they were not putting up points, and they were having a tough time getting the balls to their playmakers. Devontae Adams was clearly frustrated, even though I think I saw a stat out there,
Mhm.
Zach, that Devontae was targeted the most for a receiver, or sorry, he has the most targets and most incompletions on balls targeted to him during his tenure with the Raiders the last 2 seasons. So they tried to get him the ball, but clearly it's just not happening. You can say that that's quarterback play, or you could say that system wise something there isn't working when you have arguably a top three wide receiver.
Yeah, top three wide receiver and top three wide receiving core. I mean, Hunter Renfro, Jacoby Myers. For some reason, Jacoby Myers, I don't know if it was just what Garoppolo liked, but he was getting treated like he was the number one. I mean, Devontae
Mhm.
Adams was getting what felt like a third of the looks. Then you throw in they couldn't get anything going on the run game with Josh Jacobs. And it was just very obvious from pretty much the beginning of this year that something was going wrong in Vegas with that offense because on paper, that offense should have been incredible. I mean, before the year, everyone was talking about how Jimmy Garoppolo being a game manager was perfect for the system. Josh McDaniel was going to unleash everything he did in Pitts or in with the Patriots, which by the way, people will say the system hurt Hunter Renfro and stuff. Was this not the same system with Julian Edelman and them? So something was just going on there. I mean, I'm not sure what it was, but it's a good day to be a Las Vegas Raiders fan because they finally are just cleaning house, at least in the upper office.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. And how about this though? Because we have some more stats to back this up. The Raiders were 32nd, dead last in the NFL in rushing yards per game. They were 26 or 22nd in passing yards per game. And then, if regardless if you pass or run the ball, whatever it may be, are you scoring points? And guess what? Vegas was not doing that at all. They were
Mm-mm.
30th in the league. The teams that they were ahead of are the New England Patriots and the New York Giants. The Vegas Raiders could not average over 16 points a game so far this season. So it all makes sense. But you know what's nuts? People were wondering if they were going to make moves at the deadline too with the Raiders. But Zach, it seems like they weren't answering calls because there was a lot of reshuffling. And I think Josina Anderson touched on it.
Yeah, Josina Anderson touches on it right here. And she talks about, as we see this tweet, she says, interesting comment from a team that was, I guess, hoping to either trade for probably Josh Jacobs, explains why they ghosted us. Nobody responded yesterday. And that's interesting because it starts to make sense. A lot of people, we heard the rumors of Josh Jacobs wanted to be out, he wanted to go elsewhere. We saw Devontae Adams was frustrated, and then suddenly radio silence. It was like, oh, the Raiders decided to stay put. Why is that? I think we found our answer. It seems like the guys who would have been making those trades no longer had the power to make those trades.
Yeah, it's all adding up here. It's just nuts to think. The Raiders, what are 3-5 right now at this point of the season, and so it's not that they're out of it, but you can see that there was just hope lost. I think
Mhm.
there was reports coming out as well that Mark Davis was looking at or asking veteran players. That was a report out there of what was going on in the locker room, and he was not liking the responses he had. And I mean, hey, note to self, if the players think you're losing the locker room, you might lose your job soon enough. And it clearly, if you're not winning
Yeah.
games, which the Raiders weren't doing a great job of, you're going to
Yeah.
lose your job, especially that loss to the Bears. That
Mhm.
was brutal.
Yeah. I mean, I think those were the prime examples of, there were just situations in games where it wasn't that the Raiders were being outcoached. They were outcoaching themselves. Like, it wasn't like they were going up against the Andy Reeds and they were pulling these incredible stunts against them. It would be clock management, that just atrocious clock management, not getting players in, taking delay of games out of timeouts. And that's where you look at the coaches and you're like, what are we doing? And I think they just had enough, and the Raiders now find themselves paying another head coach top money not to coach their football team.
Well, and speaking of that right here, how about this tweet by Joe Pompliano about this coaching situations? And Zach, you were all over it. They are now paying two head coaches a lot of money, and not just a little bit of money, more than coaches are making. Some of the top coaches in all of the NFL right now. Can you just touch on that a little bit more? Give us a little bit more of Zach's stats here.
Yeah, so actually both coaches this season, Gruden and McDaniels, are tied for the eighth largest contracts an NFL coach has. So technically, right now, the Raiders are paying two head coaches top eight money not to coach their football team. So it's a bold strategy, I will say. This is not Moneyball. This is not Moneyball in baseball. This is not the ideal Moneyball situation, that's for sure.
And it's a bold strategy, Kyle, and we're going to see if it pays off for them. And what's crazy? You can say all you want that Derek Carr could have played better or not, but the fact of the matter it was before they made changes, the Raiders were in the playoffs despite all the issues with Gruden when he was fired during the season. And then Josh McDaniels comes in. He wants to recreate what he believes is the New England offense of the West Coast. That's not happening. I don't know if I want to be the New England offense of the East Coast right now either,
Yeah.
because woof, rough. But here we are, big move. But for everyone wondering, Josina Anderson touched on it as well, of saying, will there be players now for the Raiders that would want out? Let's just be honest, Zach. If you think Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs would be granted their release, or the Raiders would do that, you are sorely mistaken.
Yeah, that's not happening. We talked about this a little bit before. I think the guys you could see requesting out is going to be that backup veteran linebacker that's like, hey, I can go catch on with the contender. You can let these young guys play. I want out of this shit show. I could see one or two of those guys getting a release. But like you said, if you're dreaming that suddenly there's going to be a midseason bidding war for Devontae Adams or Josh Jacobs in the free agency market, that's not going to happen.
That's not it. Hey, it's an attractive landing spot for a head coach in the future. Maybe they get it right. But one thing's for certain, Zach, the AFC West outside of the Chiefs, is an absolute mess. If you
Yikes.
look at it, Chargers dysfunction with underperforming results on the field. The Denver Broncos, the same thing. And then now you're sprinkling in the Raiders. No wonder the
Yeah.
Chiefs are head and shoulders. It helps to have the best player in the world and the best coach in Andy Reid,
Yeah.
but it also helps when the other three teams in the division keep just
Shooting themselves in the
mistake
foot.
after mistake.
Yeah. I
There it
mean,
is.
talk about a
And
team that wishes they woke up to hearing their coach was fired with the Chargers. But the AFC West is just, it's the Chiefs, and then it's like the weird stepchildren that you're like, what's going on there? You're like, they can't be related. It's that situation.
that's all we have for the wrap up. We are doing the Ryan Ripken shows every Monday and Thursday. Catch us live on YouTube. And if you like this video or like what we're doing, hit that like and subscribe button, and we will see you soon.
We'll see ya.